We are back with more NBA coverage, and in this one, I will be covering the first round of the NBA draft that took place last night. Of course, so much had already happened before it, and that was just supposed to be the entree. The main course, obviously, was all 30 teams, or at least the ones who possess picks in the first round, going after guys who could change their rosters for this foreseeable future, whether they be franchise guys who they'll look to build around in the years to come, or just key pieces and cornerstones to add to existing rosters that they feel are already solid enough to perform in the ways that they must to accomplish what is asked of them this season. Whether they are, again, on a completely different course, maybe just trying to, compete for a playoff spot, not necessarily trying to go for the full load of a championship level roster just yet, and then others who may be looking for guys to just plug in order to help winning immediately, rather than waiting on the development process for a raw and younger prospect, quite frankly. So, with all that in mind, with that many different directions to go, it still made the rest of the draft particularly interesting. The conversation surrounding it, though, made it feel as though for at least the first 4 picks, they were likely going to go chalk. And even with some of the mock drafts that I had looked at days and even the hours before the draft itself took place, some of the same things held true for them in regards to who would go first, second, third, fourth. Early on, there would be a lot of intrigue to see, hey, okay, out of these guys, all these 3 projected to be number 1 picks in different draft classes, of course happening to be in the same one, entering at the same time, who would actually land where? That was the biggest question for at least the first 4 picks of this draft. And we got our answer virtually in no time. The Wizards had the first pick, and with it, they selected Dybantsa, the forward out of BYU. I have him listed personally as a small forward. And I guess with the Tracy McGrady comparisons that he has warranted, you could also slot him down to a taller 2 if you needed him to serve that role. Although Kashawn George already being with this Wizards team and going through his own ascent as an offensive producer on the court might prevent them from needing to lean into that so early. This was virtually a no-brainer for them to get Dybantsa, though. I mean, for most of the year up to this point, he'd been regarded as the number 1 overall pick, and that was before we even got to his strong second half of the year. Flanked by just Robert Wright the third, I believe, and not even having Richie Saunders, who himself was one of the primary scoring options and definitely the best shooter that BYU had to offer for the rest of the season after a lower leg injury. It was really put all on Dybantsa to keep that BYU team afloat. And while the first few months of his career there had been relatively pedestrian for his standard up to that point, with the hype that he got coming out of Utah prep, actually, and then committing to BYU, the second half of his 2025 freshman season was virtually the stuff of legend, as he averaged nearly 30 points a game on fair efficiency and a high amount of volume to single-handedly bring that BYU team all the way to March Madness, where they did meet their end against Texas not before he put up a 35-point game in that outing. They've been saying it all season long. The scoring potential that this man possesses is quite frankly the best in this draft class. I mean, his 25.5 points per game led the nation, and he was doing this as a freshman despite the deficiencies with his shooting, which seemed to be the biggest question mark surrounding his game right now. And even when you look at the combine, you look at that footage there, it was not a great exhibition for him in that respect. So if he is going to be this big wing who can create his own shot from any area of the floor, you would like to see him step it up from the perimeter, especially on a Wizards team that, with the way he's instantly slotted in to the small forward position, you could use that shooting. I mean, even though Trae Young can be okay from three in theory, they would be devoid of shooting on this roster as it is. And they have Trae Young at the 1, Kashawn George at the 2, AJ Dybantsa at the 3, Anthony Davis at the 4, and Alex Shaw at the 5. Doesn't inspire much hope from the perimeter in terms of offense. That front court, though, if Dybantsa can also get his defense together, all of these guys, in ways, are starting to develop their games around putting the ball on the floor and into the basket. It's intriguing to see that if they retain Anthony Davis and still work on the project that is Alex Shaw to this point, trying to round out his game and allow him to be a little more versatile on the offensive end as well. Those have always been the questions for the Wizards. You know, they'd been obviously terrible over the past few seasons trying to find these solutions at these positions. And of course, with some of the other guys that they drafted, like, they're going to slide down and take a back seat. The Bob Carringtons, Bilal Coulibaly, for example, was already slotted down to the backup small forward. But he provides great defense. And so, with that not being a question, you're obviously looking to keep pace with a league that is very much oriented on the offensive side of the basketball right now. You can't get enough of it. And all the rules lean towards you being able to perform from that area of the floor well, and much greater than other offenses of even decades past. Even if you look just a decade ago, man, like the style of play now is much more favored, reined in for obvious reasons. And Dybantsa will look to expand on that. What a year it was in college for him, earning multiple nods at All-American across different publications. Just an undeniable talent in every sense of the word. And a can't-miss prospect who was somehow viewed as the safest pick in this draft. You can't blame the Wizards for doing it, especially with them extending a fellow guard. If they would have gone in a different direction, like, that just would have jammed things up there. So it makes sense. With the number 2 overall pick, the Jazz had, and they selected Darryn Peterson, the shooting guard out of Kansas. Now, he himself also, in terms of freshman output, averaged the highest points per game for a freshman in Kansas history. Of course, you're bringing up Kansas, you're thinking K-State, Michael Beasley year. Now, in terms of Kansas specifically, it was Darryn Peterson. The thing is, with him, is that he wasn't on the floor enough. And, you know, he came out and said that he overused creatine, which led to cramps that did not leave his side for pretty much the entire season. It was that bad. If that is the story right now, then that is a terribly unfortunate situation for Peterson to find himself in, because it virtually robbed the entire national audience from really being able to showcase what he was capable of. They mentioned in high school in California that the man was averaging 30 points. He was far more dominant on the ball than we were able to witness at him perform at Kansas, due to those same kinds of injuries, right? And that is the challenge when you're trying to evaluate a talent like this. Like, you don't want to go off of what he was doing in high school, but hell, if that's the jump when he is at his healthiest, who's to say that Peterson himself When it comes to doing some of the same things that Dybantsa can do as a scorer, I mean, shit, why not? What's stopping him? The fact that even with these injuries, his footwork, especially off the ball and relocating to shots, looked like Anthony Edwards already, and he is just 19 years old. Like, that is crazy to suggest for Darryn Peterson right now. And while, there were reports similar to Ace Bailey in that, hey, he apparently did not want to go Jazz. He only met with the Wizards. That ended up being a smokescreen once again. And so the Jazz bring in yet another talented guard this year who can slot right into filling a void that the Jazz have yearned for quite a while. Like, they've had their stretches of seasons in a row now where they'll have some great offensive games every now and then. But it's just not enough to rely on that every now and then, knowing how consistently bad the defense has been for Utah in the same time frame, as well as the talent gap that they'd been facing for a little bit. Darryn Peterson is slotting right into what was Ace Bailey's intended slot at the 2 guard, and Bailey on this depth chart would be coming off the bench, while Peterson himself is going to be fit alongside George, Lauri Markkanen, now Jaren Jackson Jr., and Walker Kessler if he is staying with Utah, which more than likely is going to happen regardless of what the hell people have been saying. There's no way that the Jazz see what Kessler has done in his short time there and would just look to move on from him. I don't believe that shit for a second. All those guys have their own strengths as well. It was weird to see somebody say that the Jazz didn't have a certified scorer on their team. I mean, you have Keyonte George and Lauri Markkanen last season literally doing those things. And Keyonte George as well has hiked up his efficiency. You allow Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler to do what they do best on the defensive end, and the possibilities of just having those three contribute to a large load of the offense are just endless for the Jazz and Will Hardy right now. Like, it's looking up for the Jazz if this truly works out. Again, he fell. You're thinking best available talent, and you're thinking fit. Peterson himself was saying that he was more so worried about the fit rather than being the number 1 overall pick, even though he still expressed desire to be that. And arguably, it's probably one of the better fits he could have asked for in this case. So, it's a great pick for them. At number 3, the Grizzlies picked Cameron Boozer, the power forward out of Duke. And ironically enough, people wanted to say A.J. Dybantsa was going to be the safest pick of this draft, as if Cameron Boozer is someone to just completely look over. The man was voted the National Player of the Year for a reason. He is a 3-level scorer who shot 56% from the field and pretty much 39% from deep, despite being apparently immobile, despite being a little bit too stocky at the power forward position for some people's liking. It doesn't make any sense. Man averaged 22, 10, and 4. So he's got an all-around game here at the forward position. And comparative to what the Grizzlies once had. Because now, with not having Jaren Jackson Jr. on their team anymore via the trade, they don't have to worry about another power forward stepping in and infringing on that progress. So it will be the Cameron Boozer show pretty early. They already have him slotting in alongside Jalen Wells and Cedric Coward, who themselves are great defensive wings as it is. And then, not to mention, if you're so worried about Cameron Boozer's size here for this Grizzlies team, he's playing alongside a 7'3" center in Zach Edey, who also provides them with a massive energy as a defensive anchor on the back end. Like, that is just not a worry for you right now at all. Cameron Boozer gives them a nice surge of offense to work on. And in times, you could even put him as a point forward. Run the offense through him and allow him to play in the post with his back to the basket where he excels the most. Not all too dissimilar from what Carlos Boozer, his father, was doing in college and in the league. It's promising, though, that you look at what Cameron Boozer has brought to the table already. Even with some of the downsides of his game being athleticism, not being up to par, and also some questionable defense from time to time. The fact that he is already seemingly a more advanced shooter than Carlos Boozer is a scary sign. I looked at Carlos Boozer's shit early on. They mentioned that in the league, and again, it was a different time. You were asking these center builds and maybe power forward builds who would play in the post to play a far different style of basketball, right? This man, Carlos Boozer, averaged just 7.1% shooting from the three-point line for his entire NBA career. If Cameron Boozer, which it seemingly translates well also with a 79% free throw percentage in his lone season at Duke, if this can effectively translate over to the league, like, that's going to pay dividends for this Grizzlies team. And it adds to a unit that can also stretch the floor relatively well. I mean, Santi Aldama himself is already slotted as a backup here, but he himself can stretch the floor. Taylor Hendricks, in theory, can. Like, you have the guys for this. So it makes things pretty intriguing for Memphis. And, of course, they'd have a different pick here later in the round. So, getting this out of the way, getting a sure thing is not a terrible idea for them. I was more intrigued to see who they would try to get later. And we'll get to that as I keep running through these. At number 4, the Bulls drafted Caleb Wilson, the power forward out of North Carolina. Now, I don't know all that much about him being compared to Kevin Garnett like some people would suggest, but the man is truly a force to be reckoned with, even at the young age of 19. In his lone season at North Carolina in the same conference as Duke, obviously, he averaged almost 20 points per game and 9.4 rebounds on 57.8% shooting, and was a great player for them on both ends of the floor when it came to pushing the pace as a guy who in transition can slash and run to the rim with the best of them, and who can reject shots at will as well. So if you needed him to slide down and play defense, especially in the paint, but even on the perimeter, he would not get picked on. They mentioned that he was like one of few players to get, I guess, around 1.5 steals and 1 block in the same season. Like, they were lining this man up on the perimeter, dealing with smaller guards, and he would still be able to hold his own for possessions in a row. That's how versatile of a defender Caleb Wilson already is. And the touch around the rim is clearly great if that's the percentage you're coming up with out of college. One major thing for him to note is that, of course, he did miss the rest of the season with a thumb, I believe, and then a hand injury overall. He seems to be much better from that now. He stated in the interview after he got selected. So that's a promising sign. Also, the biggest thing for him is that jumper. For a team that has already seen their fair share of wings underperform from the perimeter, they would hope that Caleb Wilson, even if he is primarily going to be focused on slashing to the basket at 6'10", similarly to how Matas Buzelis was, actually. They want him to expand his game a little bit. That's going to be the key to most everything else. And so if he can do that, I mean, shit, like anything is possible from there. With the 5th overall pick, the Clippers selected Keaton Wagler, the shooting guard out of Illinois. Of course, he himself was one of those players whom was clearly talented enough to be on the floor, but was regarded as having a small build. He entered the season at like 165 in 6'6". It just was a year of absolute growth and change for Keaton Wagler in many ways. He put on 20 pounds throughout the season to get to his current frame of 185 pounds. He was apparently ranked number 261 in his own class. And the entire rise of Wagler from that point moving forwards was just something to witness. It did all start with the 46-point game he had against Purdue, but even past all of that, the high-level shot making from all 3 levels of the floor, the deep range that he possesses as a player, as well as the ability to stabilize the offense. For an Illinois team that was filled with as much European talent as they already had, working in each and every single position alongside him, and still putting on a display that essentially got Illinois all the way to competing in the fucking Final Four. Like, you know, how, it doesn't get much better than that. 17.9 points per game on 44% shooting and 39.7% shooting from deep for Wagler, along with 5.1 rebounds per game and 4.2 assists per game. So it's just incredible to see that ascent from Wagler. And now the Clippers get a guy in him who is going to be playing alongside Darius Garland, another guard who, even if they don't want him handling the ball immediately, no problem. Garland can take the pressure off. Wagler himself is listed here as the backup point guard for Darius Garland. And I think that makes sense. In ways he could be a point guard as well, which for his frame, they recommended. Chris Dunn will provide much better defense than Wagler can at this point, so they're still entrusting him via this depth chart to play for this Clippers team. But if Wagler, if he can continue filling out his body, getting some muscle in his system, and becoming a more well-rounded defender, like that just hikes up the value that the Clippers are getting here. Real talk. But it's a great pick for them, considering that, again, the top 4 picks and now the top 5 with this continue to go chalk. Like every single pick, you could have some intrigue here, but you didn't get a lot of true surprises just yet. I mean, every single one went as people would have expected, would have predicted prior to the draft taking place. The Nets decided that it was time for a little bit of a shakeup, and one of the moves that were actually mocked in real time, though, it looked kind of wild considering who was still on the board. With the number 6 overall pick, the Nets would take Michael Brown Jr., the point guard out of Louisville. Michael Brown Jr. is yet another player who was a freshman phenom. That had been the theme of the draft up to this point as well. Of course, the rule is typically that you're not drafting players straight out of high school. You only need 1 year of eligibility, and then you can go off to the pros. Yes, there might have been some runaway picks with the likes of the top 3, but make no mistake about it, this draft class is as deep as it gets, even as you work all the way down the lottery and even into the later stages of the round. You're getting yourself some great talents here. Michael Brown Jr. falls into that category, putting up 18.2 points per game, along with 41% shooting from the field and 34% shooting from deep, along with 4.7 assists. You do question the turnover ratio, because he also averaged 3.1 in college. However, when you're handling the ball as much as he was asked to do, especially in a game against, because let me see if I can find the game log, that would obviously be the highlight of his season, where he set the all-time school record for points in a game against NC State in a blowout win by 41 points with 45 on 60.9% shooting from the field, including 10 threes on 16 shots. There obviously is a lot of noise about the many guards that are a part of this draft class. Namely, the one taken right after him. But Michael Brown Jr. does have the talent to last and compete on the same front as these other guys. And for a good portion of the season, he had. He did also miss, I think it would have been 14 games due to injury. That is something to caution. But the Nets, I guess, in a way, they couldn't worry about that too much. They needed to find themselves some quality talent at that position. And, it was mentioned that all the Nets have done is draft guard over the past few years. I mean, they have thrown every single dart at the wall, and they're still trying to see what exactly is going to work. I mean, it was Jaeger Joman, it was Ben Saraf, it was Nolan Traore, and it is now Michael Brown Jr. out of the last 5 first-round picks that they've had. And this is just in a 2-year span. Now, Brown Jr. is kind of slight in frame, similar to Jaeger Joman, despite being on the taller end. They are hoping that Michael Brown Jr. can come in and be a sort of playmaker for them to finally give that team something to at least have some faith in for that system. And for their sake, they would need it. I mean, as they have slotted right here, have Michael Brown Jr. immediately coming off the bench, filling both guard responsibilities. Although I do think that, the Nets would be stupid to bench Michael Brown Jr. With the way that this Nets team is set up, you're better off just playing him the starter level minutes and seeing what you have. He's a young player. You have Drake Powell listed here at shooting guard. No. Let him run with Joman, Porter Jr., Randall, and Sharp. Even if they still have their questions surrounding these guys, and Joman and Brown Jr., the best thing that you can do is let them try to figure it out alongside one another and potentially build a duo that can work by committee to be the primary ball handlers of this Nets offense and finally turn things around for that team. And so, that's not necessarily a bad selection for the Nets. But the thing is, the man that would immediately be taken after them, it took the Kings just 20 seconds to make the move. And here we were saying that with the Kings falling all the way to the 7th overall pick, they lost the tank. Because you were that bad, you didn't even get the rights to a top 5 pick. No, you fall all the way down to number 7. Well, it turned out that it worked out just fine for them, as they, with the 7th overall pick, took their chance at gaining Darius Acuff Jr., the point guard out of Arkansas. You want to talk about an instant phenom. The man led the SEC in scoring, in assists per game, and has also garnered an instant connection with the Allen Iverson. Already, before he could even say that he was an NBA player, already getting nods from him, having Allen Iverson go so far as to say that Acuff Jr. is the next him. At 6'2", he's been listed at 6'2", they have him listed at 6'3", very small in nature. Not necessarily the greatest of defenders, even remotely at all, which is by far, more than anything else in his game, the weak point for him. When it comes to his skill set on the other side of the ball, however, with what he put on display, playing in all 36 games, there is absolutely no question about what he can provide on that side of the floor. He was named a consensus All-American for multiple publications, and it was well-deserved with a season that just saw him come up with clutch play after clutch play, being regarded as the best that Arkansas had to offer, despite, again, being a freshman under John Calipari, which already warrants as much pressure compared to anything out there. This was what Acuff Jr. was tasked with, and it did not matter. Despite all the other talent that Arkansas seemingly had, the Trayvon Brazils, the DJ Wagners, the Malik Thomases, who, not to necessarily spoil too much, but would wait a while to hear himself even be acknowledged in terms of his placement on the board. Like, you have all this talent surrounding you, and the entire opposing team still knows that it is you that they have to key in on, and they can't do anything to stop you. I mean, just literally, you have multiple 20-point games here, and then the game that got everyone's attention, quite frankly, against Alabama with another dynamic guard on the other end, in a game where he was hurt, he wasn't even supposed to be playing, and he plays 50 minutes, puts up 49 points, grabs, on the night, 6 threes, and also on the night has 5 assists. Every single time the Razorbacks were looking for a response in that game, they were turning to him to make the shot, and he continued to do it. The fact that he commanded that much volume, and he also was as efficient as he was, with 48% shooting from the field and 44% shooting from deep, like, that's a scary sign. This is exactly what the Kings were looking for, and what they needed. Luck fell into their hands, and they now have a man who they can truly build an entire team around once they actually do this key thing right here. Because again, I want to be brief about these picks, but I also need to provide a fair amount of context. Namely, over the past few years, in just the last decade alone, the Kings have had their fair share of guards who they once believed could change the very course of their franchise. It was Darryn Fox in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just make sure of that. Darryn Fox, in 2018. 2017. Yeah. I'm tripping. So, it was him in 2017. Instantly burst onto the scene as an athletic freak with a huge vertical and just an ability to shape-shift up and down the court, quite frankly. That has still largely been retained up to this point. Then, of course, Tyrese Halliburton in 2020. Yes, that Tyrese Halliburton that is now doing all these things with the Pacers that almost won a championship, if not for the injury that derailed the 25-26 season entirely for him. That Halliburton was drafted by the Kings in 2020, actually spent some time there working alongside Darryn Fox. Now, again, I'd written about it myself in my own prompt. There was a lot of talk about the fit between those two, both needing the ball in their hands to succeed, being a little bit weird for the coaches at the time to navigate around. And it was not beneficial to team success. The Kings are still struggling to this point. They were still on their playoff drought of larger than 14 years to that time. And they thus decided to completely let go of Tyrese Halliburton. And now we've seen what he's done. they let De'Aaron Fox go, and maybe with the relationship between him and Mike Brown in that particular context, it might have been warranted. The only thing De'Aaron Fox went on to do after that is make a finals appearance and stabilize that Spurs team when healthy. So, trust me when I say, them getting Acuff Jr. is great. It is not the first time in just the last decade that they've had their chance at a guard, whether it be a point guard, a shooting guard, who can truly change the complexion of their roster. It's not the first time they've had this opportunity to change the course of their franchise. And hopefully with Acuff Jr., they do not blow it like they have these previous two times. They need to make sure that above all else, they can actually build around Acuff Jr. and have themselves a little bit of patience, even if things aren't going their way to start out. They've already put themselves into this rut, right? It's going to be a years-long process to get out of it. You have to have patience. Because for all of, these moves here, taking that into consideration, it's likely that you're on a rebuild. You just have to accept that. And you need to give Acuff Jr. the room to flourish. The part of that is moving on from this roster entirely, for the most part. Russell Westbrook is far closer to being out of the door entirely than he even remotely is near his prime. Although if they do retain him, I'm not going to lie, knowing what Russell Westbrook was doing in the very prime of his career, as a 30-point triple-double, walking on a night-to-night basis, right? Bringing even more of that energy to Acuff Jr.'s mindset, when he kind of already has that bulldog mentality about himself, that can do wonders for Acuff Jr.'s game like you wouldn't believe. As long as he keeps the shooting touch intact when in the NBA. The Kings, though, in conjunction with all this, as I've said before on a different recap, they gotta move on from Zach LaVine. They gotta move on from DeMar DeRozan. They gotta move on from Domantas Sabonis. This is not the time to just plug in Acuff Jr. as a role player who's going to have to play off of someone else's skill set just to succeed in the NBA. No. The Kings do not have the resume to even act in that manner in the first place. And these three players, for them, although they could potentially hold value elsewhere, and I still think Domantas Sabonis is relatively a good center, as a trio, these three have not been good enough to get this Kings squad over the hump, even when they were in playoff contention. It's not like they were regarded as a team that could go all the way. They were never going to reach that label, because all three of these guys, in their own ways, they are very limited in what they can do offensively, despite the numbers that they can put up, and they cannot defend to save their lives. Now, Keegan Murray's in the mix. He already got paid, so likely you're going to retain him. None of those things are going to be affected with those particular moves. But they need to clear a path to actually create the center of attention around Acuff Jr. You have a player like that in your midst, you gotta treat him accordingly. There's just no way that you mess that up. At the number 8 pick, the Hawks selected Kingston Flemings out of Houston, another guard who is 6'4", relatively small in frame, although when you hear about his story, that is for a reason, and things could have gone very south there. I think it was mentioned that he was in a car accident, got hit at a very young age by a moving car. That in itself affected his weight. Yet he's still here, still kicking and thriving in his own role, especially for a Houston team that is known for defense. He still is cited as being fairly weak on that end of the floor, but he made an impact virtually everywhere else for a Houston team that still came up just a little bit short of their expectations in, what could be any moving, day, any season now. For Kelvin Sampson, you just have no idea. One thing you can't question about Flemings is that he's going to leave it all out on the floor, despite how small he may be. And that value is something that the Hawks can truly get behind here. During his freshman season, he averaged 16.1 points per game on 47.6% shooting, along with 38.7% shooting from deep. The big highlight of that for him is that the numbers, the production, the efficiency, the intensity with which he played always rose in Big 12 competition. And while, sometimes it can be a matter of, the strength of competition in which you play affecting your draft stock, you don't have that to stand on with Flemings, because he rose to the occasion each and every single time he faced off against one of his peers. Carrying that mentality over to the NBA is fucking huge already. And now you bring him to a Hawks team that is looking for pretty much second unit production here. They are pretty much set in their starting role right now. And of course, CJ McCollum is on the 1-year deal worth $21 million. So again, having Flemings now, potentially learning from the CJ McCollum in the different ways to maneuver around the NBA court as a smaller guard. Man, that is just going to be something insane to watch. And they have Flemings listed as a backup to CJ McCollum. Let him sit back, let him learn. He'll likely be a sixth man for this season. And that is just that's crazy to consider, man. You gotta love that. I mean, oh my gosh, man. Wow. What a time for Flemings, truly. At the number 9 pick, the Mavericks were expected to do something totally different. Okay? This ended up being one of the main, deviations from what was to be expected. For most of the draft cycle up to this point, they were expected to go guard, and especially a two-way guard. However, with Dusty May's hiring, they just continued to throw it out there that, hey, one of his players from that championship-winning squad could end up on the roster as a result. And that is exactly what ended up happening, as the Mavericks picked up Morez Johnson Jr., the power forward from Michigan. And I'm like, damn, really? Y'all had to allow the Dusty May tax to kick in right there? Come on, bro. That's crazy, man. In all seriousness, though, Morez Johnson Jr., when it comes to what the Mavericks need right now, it works out perfectly for them. Now, as I'd already kind of alluded to, he is severely offensively limited. You can look at him averaging 13.1 points per game. It mainly came from him being set up by his Michigan teammates, namely Elliot Cadeau, down low. Very low percentage, low risk percentage shots, I should say. Just getting him easy layups, getting him some touch floaters every now and then, stuff like that. Occasionally, he could stretch the floor, but he averaged just 0.9 threes per game. So it's not a huge strength of his. And he shot 62.3% from the field with the Wolverines this season, playing in 40 games, which led the nation. So you're getting a player who may not necessarily light it up on the scoreboard on a night-to-night basis. And with already having guys like Najee Marshall, like Cooper Flagg, like Kyrie Irving, who is going to return potentially, like Brandon Williams off the bench, like you'll have your fair share of scoring. Even PJ Washington can provide them with a little bit, doing some of the similar things. Again, not necessarily having to dominate the ball to be effective, but just like for Washington Jr. specifically, spotting out on different areas of the floor, waiting around a little bit, and just being ready to shoot the second the ball touches his hand. It's as simple as that. It's going to be the same role for Morez Johnson Jr. in the interior, especially, and it would have to be. Like, you're not going to have him volume shoot from outside. It just don't, like, that would get nasty pretty fast. But you're getting, most importantly, when you look at May's hire, when you look at Ujiri being there now, this is kind of the model for Ujiri that he wants to implement for this team. Johnson Jr., with that alone, he's available. He's going to be out there. You can love his game. You can hate his game. He's going to be out there. He's going to produce for this team. Especially as a defender for a Wolverines team that was one of the top defensive units in the entire nation. Morez Johnson Jr., as one of the smaller players on the same team, was one of their leaders in rebounding with 7.3. He set the tone at times as a rim protector flanking other Michigan guys on the back end. And as an individual defender, oh man, he would not be fazed by these moves. He could use his strong lower body at 255 pounds to his advantage and just completely block off a ball handler's ability to move any further. So that, hey, like you take all that into consideration, and you're like, man, this is a great move from the Mavericks in that respect. Like, they're going to have an abundance of scoring. It is about shoring up their ability to stop other teams from doing that against them. And it's a nice start to making that happen. That would change things tremendously, because now we started to get some of these picks to go out of element a little bit. At number 10, the Bucks would have their first pick, the pick that they protected, which again was a huge win for them. And so again, I was really interested to see what they were going to do with it, understanding that they retained it. And well, with it, they actually did not make the move they were initially intended to make. With the slide, they selected Braden Burries, the shooting guard out of Arizona. His game is somewhat of a blend between an interior finisher who can get to the rim in any number of ways, and a guy who, on the other end of the floor, can be one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, bar none. A dangerous combination for a team that already tried their hands at giving shooters like Max Christie, for example, an opportunity to play last season. Now, Burries will likely come off the bench for this Mavericks team, and that's no disrespect to him right now. They just have a lot of weapons at their disposal with not much to really, like they just gotta figure a lot out. I'd expect him to back up Max Christie in this sense. And, Burries himself as a three-point shooter has already got it a little bit at 39% from the three-point line. He shot 49% from the field and averaged 16.1 points per game. Like, he is just truly a magician with the ball in his hands. And that's scary, knowing that you can get that from him where he still will not be tired and slack defensively. No, he's going to guard you the whole way through, and that's going to prove huge for a man standing at 6'4", 205. And for a Bucks team that is trying to, figure out their own stuff right now. Why was I saying that? Because again, I had it in my mind that Burries would literally be drafted by the Mavericks. They didn't do that. I guess I'm still just stuck on that for some reason. But okay, they have him backing up Tyler Hero, which, makes sense for now. It does shore up that second unit. Getting all of what they got back in that Heat trade. You have a lot of young guys that still show promise in the Bucks here, and drafting Burries just continue to add to that. You'd expect Burries' role to expand a little bit. It's not going to be anything guaranteed right now. And, of course, with a new head coach in Taylor Jenkins, it's not expected to be. But it's going to be a learning process for everybody. So that's going to be interesting to follow. And then you get to the number 11th overall pick. And, the Warriors had it. Okay? Yeah, I was very adamant about them taking a big man, namely a Dybantsa from the same fuck-ass school. Okay? I was saying this the entire time. Because while the Warriors started the trend of playing the small ball lineup, alright? It was time for them to get a big man. It was time, okay? A true big man. And Mora fits all of those tools. Not only does he protect the rim, not only does he have great touch around the rim, but as a facilitator at his position as well, he is truly adept at getting players to their spots. From the post, from other positions on the floor. It's truly good. And you're not expecting that from a 7'3" man. If there was ever a time to go for one, it would be then, right there. Dybantsa was still on the board. Labaron Philon Jr., as I was saying in real time, would have been an enticing option for the Warriors as well if they were thinking guard. Their mindset apparently was to get a player who could make an instant impact. So that would probably rule Philon Jr. out. But they had their pick. And I guess with the decision that they made, you're still getting that. But man, oh man. It's just a missed opportunity for the Warriors. Even when you look at the fact that Lacob and Dunleavy Jr. were apparently disagreeing over the pick, it was likely because it was between this person or Mora. Whatever the case might have been, once they announced the selection, they took Yaxel Lendeborg, power forward, also from Michigan. And I guess I could say general forward because I'm sure there were times where Lendeborg himself was playing small forward, with Morez Johnson Jr. himself being a power forward, right? You had just had so many big, tall players with size for this Wolverines team. Which you just can't teach that, especially when it comes to them playing that kind of defense all over the floor against you. It just made life a living nightmare for anyone that had to go up against them last season. And Lendeborg was a huge factor in that equation. Now, Lendeborg himself, his journey there is honestly something to where it's even when you hear him speak alongside his mother, who is also dealing with a very unfortunate situation as well, despite all the noted sacrifices that she has had to make up to this point of time. He is actively going through a lot right now. So that aspect of things for Lendeborg can't be lost on anyone. Came all the way from community college. is one of the oldest players in the draft at 23, and yet still a lottery pick in this moment because of the nature with which he carries himself on the court. Like, it's a crazy rise for Lindeborg, man. And, hopefully when it comes to everything that his mother is dealing with, literally sitting there as she is dealing with a form of cancer right now, like you are hoping that everything is much improved with that, and that she can frankly overcome it. He has dealt with that much adversity, and he is still trying to overcome it right now. So from that standpoint, coming all the way from Arizona Western, coming here from UAB, and then the Wolverines last season, becoming a national champion, you are getting a guy who is going to be more than motivated to perform at a high level instantly, which is what the Warriors, again, by that logic, were looking for, right? You want somebody to make an instant impact, you're going to get that. He's 23 years old, and I guess in this sense, thinking about it a little bit, like, you juxtapose a pick like this with what the Warriors did to get Jonathan Kuminga in 21 and to not have Kuminga on the team anymore. Think about what was going on in that situation and how the potential was so seemingly sky high for Jonathan Kuminga, yet in this system, he wasn't able to get minutes. Steve Kerr did not want to play him. That is a fact. The talent was there, the efficiency, the consistency, the defense was not. And for a player in Lindeborg now, all these years later, you're getting one who has more experience. You're getting one who is coming out as an all-around defender who has also been very durable in college. And the man even fucking played through injury while the Wolverines were on this championship run. He can score from all three levels relatively well. 51.5% shooting from the field, 37.2% shooting from deep last season. And he is just truly, like, when it comes to what the Warriors would need here, athleticism, finally, at the wing position, and an ability to play at multiple positions, guarding multiple positions. That is what Lindeborg can do for this Warriors roster. So from that perspective, I guess I can't really be like too harsh about the pick. It does, to an extent, make sense. But I saw something about a press conference that Michael Dunleavy Jr. had after it, and I'm not gonna lie, I gotta take a look at it, because if I find out who exactly was endorsing the Lindeborg pick, it's not like it's even all that bad. I just had to come down after yesterday night. It's not even like it's all that bad, but I just want to have a word with you, because again, I said all those things about Mara. You look at the Western Conference and you see just how many big men are up to tear up the fucking league right now. And while, again, playing small ball to an extent worked when you're getting fucking 7'5" demigods to have to deal with on a night-to-night basis, it is not so easy to just put a band-aid on the problem and completely bypass getting a true big man. Especially one who can serve a versatile role and satisfy other skill sets, like Mara can, seemingly. Mara as well is also 21 years old, so again, another fairly young player here. Like, you know, if I find out who endorsed the Lindeborg pick, it's not that bad. I just want to have a word with you, because you want to know what the Thunder did just mere minutes after Lindeborg was taken. They literally took Adai off the fucking board for those same reasons. For those same reasons. And to give themselves another chance at potentially slowing down Victor Wembanyama. I mean, there aren't too many other reasons you're going to make the pick. There aren't too many other reasons for the Thunder. Any kind of talent that they can pick up at this point is just an added fucking bonus. And I hope that people genuinely understand that. Having a big man who can do all those things, and he won't even be the starter. He won't even be the starter. Because as far as we know right now, Isaiah Hartenstein is still there. Now, there are some people thinking that, oh, he's gone. There are some people that are thinking, oh, they may lose him. And again, they have a number of different ways they can go about it. In the event that they actually do lose Isaiah Hartenstein, you get Adai Mora for cheap and you plug him in alongside Chet Holmgren. It's like, oh my gosh, like he's right there for the taking, and you give the Thunder a chance to attempt to get themselves a guy who can be responsible for stopping Wemby. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and scream Wemby stopper, but these are sentiments that were had the second that I saw him play. The second that I thought he was eligible for this draft. It's running through your mind. Oh man, this is a guy right here, especially if he's carrying over that kind of defense, being the anchor on the back end for an already stout Wolverines defense. And you're now bringing that to the NBA for people to deal with? Ooh, man. So again, we're just adding to the laundry list of players that the Thunder can plug in anywhere and not lose a step with. Just watch. Just watch. And it gets even better for the Thunder later in this round. Oh my goodness. For the 13th overall pick, the Bucks selected Nate Ament, the power forward out of Tennessee. Although, with as slim as he actually is, I guess I wouldn't even be too mad at him being a small forward from time to time. Ament is known mainly for his rigid defense at Tennessee. And I can see where people would get that from. I mean, the length alone, the wingspan that he has, and, the technique that he has defensively is pretty damn good already. So that's a great sign. When it comes to other parts of his game right now, they just frankly need work. They need work. They need work, man. It's nothing against Ament right now. He is 19 years old. It is even said that he can still grow, which is scary, considering he's already 6'10". He can still grow. That is, as long as he refines other parts of his game, that could actually be pretty nasty. But it needs to happen. Like, I don't think that the Bucks' goal with this pick, again, you're just trying to build for the future. And as I said, the win in and of itself was always having 2 picks in the first place after losing Giannis. That was the victory they had. Whether you hit or miss on one or both of them, the fact that you have that many bites at the apple to begin with is already huge for the inventory that you got back in that trade. They're not expecting Ament Jr. to come in and be the next Giannis all of a sudden. That's not what they are expecting. But his efficiency is a massive problem. I think he was like 6'8", 6'9" throughout the season. But for him to primarily focus his game in the mid-range and potentially at the cup, he cannot be shooting 39.9% from the field like he did in college. And also 33.3% from deep. Although I don't think that's where he's going to live as a player for the most part. You gotta hike that up several notches in the NBA. That is far worse than most of the guards we went through. And we're talking about size being a disadvantage for them. Now again, Ament is not a perfect prospect. He is not going to remain this way. But the Bucks are genuinely hoping with Taylor Jenkins there now, and also get him in the lab with your shooting coaches, like whatever it is gonna take. You have the time on your hands to start developing these players along. So it's about getting Ament there, and I think with him as well, he himself, as the son of a mother who escaped the Rwandan Civil War, he also understands a thing or two about adversity. So I'm not questioning that. There have been moments in big-time situations, though, where Ament has seemed to struggle. Namely, I think there was a game against Vanderbilt in the SEC tournament, if I'm not mistaken, where he had like 0 points in the first half. It was not a great outing for him. They lost that game against Vanderbilt. And while he still was able to put up a decent amount of points, he shot 1 of 13 from the field, all 5 from deep. He also had his noted struggles later in March Madness. Miami of Ohio saw him go scoreless in 18 minutes. Michigan is obviously a tough match for anybody. He shot 2 of 12 from the field. He had a few games this season where, although his talent is reasonable, you're looking at those outputs and you are kind of questioning exactly what frame of mind you were getting out of Nate Ament in those moments. Is he truly driven to perform as an elite level player in those high leverage situations, or is he consistently crumbling and folding under pressure? It can't be the Darius Acuff Jr. show for every freshman out there. And it would be tough for people to have that expectation of a guy who can just always come in and call their own number. Ament may genuinely not be there yet, and I'm saying that for now, that is okay. But these are things to caution for his game, and the Bucks should be wary of them. They should try to help him out, right? You're in a rebuild right now. You're likely not going to contend for much of anything. They have him lined up as a small forward behind Jaime Jaquez Jr., who, as an offensive player, he can actually learn a lot from, considering the 5-tool nature Jaquez Jr. has about himself on both ends of the floor. There's a lot to take in from him specifically as an older rookie who came into the league, right? Like, you can have him show him the ropes. Like, this would be the perfect time to do it. I can't even lie to you. So, again, Ament is not going to be a stagnant player. Progress isn't always linear, they say. If his body can grow, if his game can grow, like there are a number of outcomes for him to deal with in the future. Right now, as it is, there are some things to genuinely question. I think that's fair to suggest, but it's not necessarily the end of the world for Ament. And it's not like putting a bookend on it, just completely writing him off. Like you can't do either of those things. He's a rookie. Like, it's gonna take time. It's gonna take time for that entire Bucks team to really get back to that level they once were at. So, like, there's genuinely no hard feeling when it comes to that at all. At the number 14 overall pick, the Hornets selected Hennes Steinbeck, the power forward from Germany and Washington. Now, I was like, he was mocked to go later to a different team. I was not fucking expecting the Hornets to take him. And yet, thinking about it over the course of this time, considering what the Hornets have done at their center position over the past couple of drafts, I mean, and then also having Moussa Diabate there, who himself is known for his rebounding. Like, they just have this weird bot committee system with all these young guys coming in and providing them with solid minutes. They don't have one true guy in there right now who can hold down the fort. They have several who in spot minutes can provide them with elite play on the back end. It was mentioned that Steinbeck's defense could be much improved. But despite that, as a finisher, and the fact that Steinbeck as well actually led the nation in rebounds with 11.8 as a freshman, also averaging 18.5 points per game, his interior game is fucking flawless, especially in the post. Put that motherfucker down there. Oh man, it's a wrap. And considering the background of his father being a teammate of the Dirk Nowitzki, yeah, you can imagine that would be on point. It didn't have to be. So, to me, this is a pick that caught me off guard in real time. I can understand why the Hornets would make it, though. I mean, like, damn, like, shit, all right. Steinbeck, they have him listed as a center here. You could even put him at power forward behind Miles Bridges from time to time, just to try to get these players more minutes, quite frankly. I would not be opposed to that at all. He's got the build for it. So why in the world not? Why not? With the 15th overall pick, the Bulls selected Dallin Swain, a guard forward from Texas. So essentially a wing. And at first I was like, I don't know about this. I'm kind of bullish on them making this decision. I'm not gonna lie to you. Why the fuck would they draft themselves a wing, considering that they have the likes of Patrick Williams, considering that they have the likes of Isaac Garo here already? Why do it? Why would they do it? They essentially stated that when it came to his two-way play, as an efficient 54.2% shooter who averaged 17.3 points per game with Texas as a junior, so he's one of the more experienced players in the draft as it is, and with his ability as a ball handler offensively, they viewed him as an Ayo Dosunmu replacement. Enough said. Considering what just happened for Ayo Dosunmu, you completely lost him. And now you had to reset with all these combinations of guards that just could not defend at all on your team. Yes, you add another one to the woodworks here in Swain, and in a new system with Splitter, he'll still have to learn a lot. But, when it comes to that, he's not necessarily going to be punished for making too many mistakes. He'll be able to flow right in to the system and learn on the fly with the rest of the team. They have Dallin Swain listed as a third-string small forward and a fourth-string power forward. I'm sure that it changed up a little bit as they just continue to work out other stuff and other rotations around their team right now. But, man, if Swain can continue providing that defense, I mean, it should work out for them. Got some chaos later in the draft because they just wanted to keep swinging around picks. Initially, the Grizzlies had this number 16 overall pick, and it was actually traded to the Thunder. During this time, they literally asked Caleb Wilson a question about his game. And this man has the gall to answer that he is a good jump shooter. Now, considering what I had already went through and told you about Caleb Wilson, all the signs would point to him not being that at all. The fact that he gave out that answer on the ESPN broadcast is crazy. Even crazier is the timing. Before he could even get out his full statement, they had to pause him for the announcement of the 16th overall pick. And with it eventually going to the Thunder, the Grizzlies had the draft rights to Bennett Stirtz from Iowa, a man who himself is regarded as a lights-out three-point shooter on high volume. Yeah. And the Thunder, you heard me damn right, are getting him. Wasn't it enough that they already had fucking one of the fucking Sanford brothers, okay? One of those niggas. One of them. They already had him. And you are now adding a guy in Bennett Stirtz, also from Iowa, to this damn team just to come off the bench, catch, fire, and shoot. That is literally going to be Sturtz's job. He put up 6.9 3-pointers per game and shot 35.8% from the field. So again, just because they can and will, with the amount of picks that they still have in the vault, the Thunder just keep this trend going. It is crazy. Like, yes, Bennett Stirtz himself was, kind of asked to be the lead guard for Iowa. He won't have to fill out that same role. But, of course, the, trick is for the Thunder, at any one point, he can elevate to playing in that particular manner if you need him to. And even at 6'3", 6'4", he is currently listed. Like, it doesn't matter. He can still slot right in and make that impact. They have him listed as the third string point guard. And it just makes things incredibly deep for them. Like, you already have Jared McCain being a backup shooting guard. You have Cason Wallace being a backup shooting guard, sometimes small forward. Like, it just, these rotations are so wonky, but they just work for a team that can now attempt to build 3 fucking starting fives on one roster. Like, it's crazy, man. It's insane shit. This makes no sense, bro. This makes no damn sense. The gift that keeps on giving, because these teams over the years wanted to give the Thunder all of these assets in return. And they're just trying to create a roster that is so good that there would literally be no weakness on it. That's literally the point to which we are getting with this OKC team. With the 17th overall pick, the Thunder initially had the pick. Then it was traded to the Grizzlies, and then the Grizzlies sent this pick to the Pistons. They would draft Ibuka Akariye, a 6'1" shooting guard from Stanford. Severely undersized. Let's get one thing absolutely clear. Like, they could have had him listed at point guard, and even the Pistons on this roster have him as a point guard. A 6'1" shooting guard. What the fuck? The man himself, though, in all seriousness, was mocked to go later. He is an interesting prospect for a Stanford team that needed as much, help as possible. He tried to provide it for them single-handedly, leading the ACC in scoring with 23.2 points per game, on 46.5% shooting from the field and 35.4% shooting from deep. You're talking about a player who can create his own shot, can't necessarily create his own shot for other players. He is severely limited as a playmaker. When it comes to them, the Pistons specifically trying to get a secondary, maybe even a tertiary scoring option at times to handle the ball and take the pressure off of Cade Cunningham even a little bit, it looks like Okorie can do that for them in ways that you may not expect on the surface, but that could become very important for this Pistons team in times. Especially, if they're going to make these deep playoff runs and face the kind of stuff they did in the postseason. Got to be ready for it in some way. So having Okorie as insurance doesn't necessarily hurt. It's like, damn. Whole time, you have a pair of other guards on the board who could be regarded in ways as better prospects than Okorie, who were still alive at this point. And I'm just like, bro, one of these guys have to be taken at some point. And luckily, the Hornets with their 18th pick, so they doubled back and they got the guy. They, with the 18th overall pick, their second of the night, selected Christian Anderson Jr., the point guard from Texas Tech, and a true maestro at the point guard position. I mean, everything you would want in a true point guard for this day and age, he's got it. Everything you want, especially on the offensive end. Keep in mind that for his sophomore season, he was working alongside JT Toppin in an increased role. So, naturally, that's the man who you're going to want to feed the ball to at a high level. And yet, he was still doing it without question. Now, again, being asked to handle the ball more got him in some very vulnerable situations as a ball handler. You can definitely caution the 3.3 turnovers per game, but again, that might just be the going rate for your guards every now and then, and since they're going to run the offense through their skill sets most of the time. In 33 games played for Texas Tech, despite a season as well that went south after JT Toppin got injured, Christian Anderson averaged 18.5 points per game, a Big 12 high 7.4 assists per game, and shot 47.2% from the field, while also shooting 41.5% from deep. Let me repeat, 41.5% from deep. As a one who can dominate in pick and rolls, who can get his own look, who can space out off the ball, get his own shot at a high level. Like, there are so many things you like about that. If you drafted Christian Anderson Jr. and the Hornets get him in what could be a reserved role, like when you see it, they have him backing up LaMelo Ball primarily as a point guard. So you're telling me that this man, Christian Anderson Jr., could be tasked with leading the second unit instantly, while having a load of defenders to flank him, especially in Zion James, a man who himself, a senior at Duke before he was drafted last year, was just filling out all these different responsibilities as a rebounder, as a playmaker, as a defender for that team. You're bringing that there. You have Grant Williams and you have Ryan Kalkbrenner coming off the bench as a rim protector. All you need Christian Anderson Jr. to do is go to work offensively to make sure that they get the most out of the non-LaMelo Ball minutes, which could be fair, considering that they found a lot of the success last season with playing LaMelo Ball just a tad bit less than they usually would, naturally to keep him conserved from injury. If that's going to be the key for them still, Christian Anderson Jr. is going to see a lot of action this season. And to have him work in those same ways with guys like Ryan Kalkbrenner, and occasionally in rotations, working with some of the starters. Hoo-wee. Just be prepared, man. Again, like a very good guard prospect. And then you have what the Raptors proceeded to do. With a 19th overall pick, they selected Allen Graves, a power forward center. At least I'm listing him as a power forward center, coming out of Santa Clara. Initially, they have Allen Graves slotted right in as a backup 3 to R.J. Barrett, which I find incredibly interesting. I did watch a few Santa Clara games this season, and Allen Graves appeared to me to be a full-fledged glass cleaner, which sounds fucking crazy for me to say. That sounds mega disrespectful. The shooting was not clear to me. I must have missed something there, I will admit. But I still find it odd that the Raptors would make this move. I guess if they're expecting him to be a backup to R.J. Barrett, he can provide them with shooting that R.J. Barrett may not necessarily have. One thing of note as well that some people were questioning is the fact that as a sophomore, he was benched for most of the season. He was a healthy redshirt in a class loaded with freshmen who made instant impacts on their teams. Plural. And Graves, even in his sophomore season, started in just 4 games. That kind of really rubbed some people the wrong way. I'm not going to lie to you. But even in that role, he did average 41.3% shooting from the three-point line on 2.6 attempts. And I guess this is something that has drawn the ire of the Raptors over the past few seasons. On the one end, they've tried their hand at getting these small ball centers who could make impacts. Namely, going to San Francisco, another West Coast Conference team at the time. Of course, that conference is no longer to be in this upcoming year, okay? As it was at the time, they were a West Coast Conference team. They chose to take Jonathan Mobo from that draft. Mobo is currently listed as the 5th string center. So he has struggled to even be in the rotation. And I'm just wondering, is there a chance for Graves to fall into that same situation if things do not go in the ways that the Raptors expected to? You would hope not, but there's a model to be understood there. Same thing with Grady Dick, who himself was also played out of the rotation because of the lack of shooting that they were truly getting from him. And yet, coming out of Kansas, he was expected to burst onto the scene as a three-point specialist for this Raptors team. That hasn't happened to this point, and now he's out. So I guess they look to Graves to see, hey, can he finally bridge that gap? If we need him to play small ball 4, can he effectively do that for us? Which is like, that's fair. You would need to continue adding to that, but you already have Colin Murray-Boyle showing you what he showed you in the playoffs as a small ball 4 and sometimes spot. So I don't know if you'd need Graves to do the same thing here. And can he also, when he's called to be a spot-up shooter, can he make those at a high clip for us? Or are we going to have issues with that in the same way that we did with Grady Dick? We surely hope not. At number 20, the Spurs took Jayden Quaintance, the power forward and center from Kentucky. Now, it was mocked for them to do it, so they did go chalk here. It's just about the injuries with Quaintance. The defensive upside that he possesses as a player is one of the best this draft has to offer. That is not hyperbole. It is one of the best that this class has to offer. Quaintance has to be on the floor. He has to be on the floor. He is such a young player. So young. They mentioned that this man, let me make sure, just to make sure I have this right? Like, yo, they were saying this man was 18 years old. Like, he is young. He will be 19 on July 11th. A young player. Like, there is a lot for him to look forward to. And to have the Spurs pick him up, knowing the struggles that they had defensively with Luke Kornet on the floor in the non-Wembanyama minutes. Despite the fact that Quaintance is kind of on the smaller end of your typical center, if you can have him on the floor in those non-Wembanyama minutes, being tasked with the responsibility of defending, that is not going to be much of an issue for him. Not much at all. He's got to be on the floor. Like, they mentioned that the amount of minutes he played last season in around 68 was by far one of the lowest ever marks for a player drafted in the first round and in the top 20 ever. And again, Quaintance can't necessarily control the injuries that he would be plagued with. He played in only 24 games at Arizona State before transferring to Kentucky. And they were expecting him to take the next step forward at Kentucky. And you only got 4 games of it. Again, just flashes. But a very small sample size. Now, that is something that we can't necessarily reverse course from. It already happened. He's in the league now, despite all of that. And that's a massive testament to what he can do. Okay? You just hope that health abides for something like this. At the number 21 overall pick, this pick would be traded to the Grizzlies, and the Pistons selected Karim Lopez, a forward from Mexico in the New Zealand Breakers. Karim Lopez had been a name on draft boards for a while, and in fact, he was actually mocked to go several different places. He was mocked to go inside the top 10. He was mocked to be drafted by the Warriors for a time. All over the place. People were in regards to figuring out what was going to happen. And through it all, Karim Lopez got himself selected in the first round, becoming the first Mexican-born player since Eduardo Nahera in 2004 at the 38th overall pick to be selected, and the first Mexican-born player to be selected in the first round of the NBA draft. Obviously, a historical moment, and he was very emotional about being selected with that pick. I thought that the Grizzlies were expected to go in a different direction as the draft continued to unfold, but I digress. He played fairly well in the NBL system, and in fact, as they say here, he became the youngest player in NBL history at the age of 17 to record a double-double. So, the man, even at 6'8", he has got the ability to put the ball on the floor and clearly get his way to the rim at ease, which does show promise for this Grizzlies team. You also just continue to add to your depth at that position. Now, I don't think that they have him listed here right now. Okay, they do as the third string small forward and the fifth string rather, power forward, behind a lot of guys. Like, this is going to be the question for the Grizzlies now. Like, how exactly do they go about this? We're going to see a lot in the Summer League as well of these guys. And, maybe when it comes to seeing them play there, we'll get a glimpse and more of a feel for how these teams might regard incorporating them early on. You would not expect that Karim Lopez, with that listing, would get played much. But who's to say? Anything is most certainly possible if we can see that kind of history take place on this night. At the number 22 overall pick, the 76ers took Labaron Philon Jr., the point guard from Alabama. Size and defensive woes being the reasons cited for his downslide in this draft as deep as it was. It made no sense, and it is complete and utter bullshit in regards to that, considering just how many other guards were selected, and yes, they were probably viewed as better prospects. Just how many small guards were taken over Labaron Philon Jr. in the first place. Abuka Correa is fucking 6'1", 170 something, and even he was taken over Labaron Philon Jr. Don't give me that crap. It just made no sense to me how a player who, when it comes to guards putting together offensive skill sets, was probably the closest thing to Darius Acuff Jr. in this draft. I mean, look no further than the same game that they had played against each other when Alabama faced off against Arkansas. Even with him being the lesser of the prospects when it comes to the national spotlight in that game, not only did Alabama end up with the win, Labaron Philon Jr. himself, when it comes to this very game, put together a 35.7 assist night. In the same game. Nobody wants to give that credit, and everybody wants to overlook that, like Labaron Philon Jr. doesn't have the same kind of scoring prowess here. Yet he slides all the way down to 22. What the fuck are we doing? And then for the 76ers to get him, I'm like, okay, I thought the Grizzlies were going to get him. I thought, hey, maybe a different team in this mix later in the draft could have gotten him. No, he falls to the 76ers when I didn't even think that their need for guard was particularly all that great. They'll take it. They'll take the talent. Like, it's just, when he's falling down that far already, like, it's okay. We're just gonna stop the waiting process for him, and we're gonna pick him up. Fine. All right, we'll allow it. Thank you again, Daryl Morey. Thank you again. This draft pick under a new regime with both Jameer Nelson and Mike Yancey. Jameer Nelson knows a thing or two about being a smaller guard, finding a way to impact the game. Just saying. With those two now being at the helm of this, handling this draft night, they felt the impulse to have to make up for what Daryl Morey did to them by selling high for Jared McCain. As a shooter especially, Jared McCain was probably expected to do similar things. Labaron Philon Jr. will probably come in with more scoring upside than McCain did coming out of college from Duke. And you now have that in your arsenal if you're Philadelphia. You get that for cheap, and you have him immediately backing up Tyrese Maxey. Now, Philon Jr., if he is still there, can also learn a lot from Kyle Lowry. Using whatever size he may have to his advantage, and also picking up a good amount of basketball IQ. So again, it's not just a wrap for Philon Jr. because of the lack of size and defensive woes, as long as you build a competent enough team around him. People were also saying with some of the stuff that I've been reading that, hey, as a potential role player who can pick up the pace of offense and provide teams with additional scoring, Labaron Philon Jr. could slide right into that role too. And it just so happens that on a team that is massively overpaying Paul George and Joel Embiid already, so you don't have a choice but to trust those two and keep them on your roster. You're giving a fair contract to Tyrese Maxey now, and you have VJ Edgecombe coming off of what he did last season. Like, you've got a lot of young promise here blended in with the hopes of potentially contending for a title. So you've got to insert that guard off the second unit who can take control. And I think that Philon Jr. will ultimately get to a point where he can. He won't be expected to elevate into a starter for this team because there just wouldn't be room for it. Not right now, at least. But that's not an issue for a player in Philon Jr. who himself, I think he'll be like 21. Yeah, 21 on November 24th. Like, bruh, come on, man. What the fuck? Dude, it just that is just such an interesting but, reasonable pickup at that point, considering the deep salon he'd already had. At the number 23 overall pick, the Hawks selected Zuby Ejiofor, the forward center from St. John's. I was like, yeah, it does make sense for the Hawks to do it, considering the identity that they want to live by defensively. That is Ejiofor's strong suit. That is definitely his strong suit. I mean, he's gotten so much praise for it over the years, right? Regarded as Pitino's most important player for that team. And even playing for Bill Self in his freshman year, carrying that defense over to just being a staple of that unit. Most improved player, Big East Tournament most valuable player, Big East Defensive Player of the Year, so on and so forth. Just a true lockdown defender at his position. And even with his smaller frame at 6'7", they have him listed at 6'9", 6'8", being trusted as the backbone of that St. John's defense that kept on getting all the way to the brink of success. And that is mainly because of what Ejiofor was doing for them as a defender. And you bring that kind of spirit over to this Hawks team after they'd already gotten Kingston Flemings. After you look at the kind of talent they have on the front court already, you add in another player who can come in and give them an instant impact. Like, Ejiofor is likely one of the older players in this draft. That is no secret. Ejiofor himself is 22 years old. So yeah, one of the older players in this draft, but he'll come right in and instantly help out this Hawks team shore up even more of their second unit defense. So that, when they have to sub out eventually, their starters, you can have the second unit come in, and you can at least trust that they will not let the game get too far out of reach. Trust me, with Ejiofor on the court, that is not going to happen. At the 24th overall pick, the Knicks initially had it, and they swapped it with the Lakers, who actually had the next pick in their possession. The Lakers then got the draft rights to Cameron Carr, a guard forward from Baylor, who himself is also one of the more interesting prospects coming out of this draft. People have gone so far as to say that, hey, this guy, standing at 6'5", is a bit of a steal in regards to this draft, and they may have something to that. Now, he went through a bit of a stretch there for Tennessee where he just did not appear in many games, and quite frankly, that might be due to injury, that might be due to the other talent that Tennessee had on that roster at the time, gaining a little more trust over Carr. Whatever the case may be, as a junior, he made his transfer over to Baylor, getting a solid amount of starts for pretty much the first time in his collegiate career. And what a move it was under Scott Drew. His defense was truly unlocked, and his athleticism was just off the charts for this Baylor team that just seems to get the best out of these smaller guards every single time in Scott Drew's tenure. He averaged 18.9 points on 49.4% shooting from the field, along with 37.4% shooting from deep across 34 games. So now you have a full season's worth of work to look at, and it paints a pretty good picture for Carr. It's kind of wild because it's like I'm thinking the Lakers at that point, with their initial next pick, they were going to go after the likes of a big man and such. I couldn't have been more wrong, but for them to now have another wing for the low who can come in and at least provide them with the ability, in theory, to catch and space out 4 shots and defend at a high level. That's all that you can ask for if you are LA at this point. You're not, outside of the draft, going to find many other ways to build out your roster. So you have to look for moves like this in order to really sustain excellence as a team. And it seems like with getting a player of this caliber, you're attempting to make this happen. So that opened the floodgates for the Knicks then, who, again, in the swap with the Lakers, got the draft rights to another player in Sergio de la Rea, a player from Spain. Now, again, he was actually mocked across several of the publications to go around this time frame of the draft when it came to the overall selection process. I was not as familiar with him before reading them, to be fair. And that can be how it kind of happens with a few of the overseas prospects. Is with the way some of the agencies work as well, you trying to keep that quiet. You're not trying to let anybody else get a hold of what your client may or may not be doing if you think that they are that special. De La Rea, I think it was like Valencia basket or something of that sort. They mentioned that he averaged around like 41% shooting from there. I think they're saying, okay. They're saying that the Knicks actually traded Sergio de la Rea over to the Mavericks. Damn, that was quick. Yes, Valencia, in the ACB, and he averaged like 41% shooting from 3. I guess with the Mavericks now having him, again, for very cheap, you get yourself another solid perimeter shooter. Now, at 6'5", I'm not too sure about De La Rea's defense right now. Man, the Mavericks are just continuing to deal. You gotta respect it, I guess. Like, I genuinely did not know that. Here I am thinking the Knicks are just holding on to De La Rea. And no. No. With the 26th overall pick, the Nuggets had the rights to it, and they actually decided to send the pick over to the Spurs. With it, San Antonio selected Tarris Reed Jr., the center from UConn. Love it. Love it. Love it. You heard Tarris Reed Jr.'s name all throughout March Madness. And for good reason. I was thinking the Lakers would have gotten him because, again, the physicality with which he is consistently playing and the effort that he is going to give you on a night-to-night basis, I would have certainly trusted over the likes of DeAndre Ayton. You now have the Spurs double up on that. Defenders who, in Reed Jr.'s case, can provide you with some great interior scoring as well in moments where he would be in. Now, that is something for the Spurs to think about. Again, I don't have a problem with them getting either of the two. There could even be moments of time where they share the court together, which you would have to be careful about for spacing reasons. But outside of that, I mean, bro, there is genuinely a lot of promise that comes with them getting those two. Reed Jr. is far more experienced, of course, going to come in as a little older than Quaintance at this point. Far older than Jayden Quaintance, actually. Let me rephrase that. The 18-year-old man compared to Terrace Reed Jr. being 23 years old on August 5th. It's not even close. But, shit. Hey, man. I kind of like what the Spurs are thinking about here. Because they were just a disaster. Of course, on some nights, you're not always going to have your bench perform up to par when the superstar is not on the court. It's not fair to expect that this will happen night in, night out. But it's also not fair to, in that same way, have Luke Kornet essentially get fried each and every single fucking time, with the exception of a few standalone cases. Every time he subbed into the game. Literal seconds after he subbed into the game, at times, they'll just go right after him. And with centers like these potentially holding down the fort for the next few years to come, in those spot minutes, the Spurs are looking to say that, hey, we've got a counterattack to that now. And anyone who wants to, try to score on us, they're going to have to play a true half-court offense. They're going to have to swing the ball around. Because we are not going to give up those interior shots as we once did with Luke Kornet in the system. All right, at the number 27 pick, the Celtics selected Cenac Jr., a power forward center out of Houston. Cenac Jr. was one of those guys who I looked at coming out of this draft as a purebred defender. And, as I was being asked about it, I'm just going to say that Cenac Jr. is in that same boat as what Jabari Smith Jr. was coming out of Auburn out of college. Guys that are both regarded as strong defenders, strong rebounders. And Jabari Smith Jr., I guess, has turned out to have a solid three-point shot. It isn't currently there for Cenac Jr. right now, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Hitting those mid-range looks from time to time, getting in the post and getting those high-quality shots at the basket. Those are great alternatives to have in his toolbox right now. He averaged 9.5 points per game and 7.9 rebounds per game, but again, on a Houston team that is going to defend their asses off, was one of their hallmark players on that side of the floor. Truly holding it down. Already. And for him to just be a freshman in that role. So now you're bringing him to the Celtics team. And, you love the kind of youth that you would get from this positioning here. You can have Cenac Jr. play the backup 4. You could even have Cenac Jr. play the backup 5 in the event that Nikola Vucevic was to leave. I would think those two roles would serve him best. That's why I kind of say, hey, maybe he could be a center. We want to talk about players still potentially growing. The man is 6'11" and he's 19. years old. So he himself is also pretty young. There's a lot of room for Cenac Jr. to keep developing his game and potentially expanding on his abilities. And I think that is pretty damn scary for the rest of the league. Pretty damn scary. So I'd just be ready for that. With the 28th overall pick, the Nets selected Joshua Jefferson, the power forward out of Iowa State. It was kind of disrespectful for them to compare him to Kyle Anderson. I think he's a lot better than that. But I can see what they would get at here. At Iowa State, he was undoubtedly their best player on the floor, their unquestioned leader on the floor, and he, if it wasn't Tamin Lipsey as a guard coming in on those spot minutes, distributing the ball at a high level, it would be Joshua Jefferson working in the post primarily to get the bulk of his points, while also being able to find so many different open looks for other players from that position on the floor. It's just crazy, man. Last season saw a career high with 16.4 points, 7.4 rebounds, 4.8 rather assists, and 0.8 blocks per game as well, on 47.1% shooting, with also 34.5% shooting from deep. Another four who can, at times even, stretch the floor if you need him to. That man put up a fucking shot from the logo. I'm like, what the fuck? Here I am thinking that this man is genuinely just a small ball five, who is limited in his range. No. When you see that kind of shit, and you're Brooklyn in this case, I mean, hey, he can slot right in as a potential backup. Now, on a Nets team that is still looking for answers, there are going to have to be some things to work around here. But hey, you already look at that and you see, damn, Randall ain't gonna give me that. I'm just saying. I'm just saying, man. With the 29th overall pick, the Cavs had the draft rights to it and then traded it to Sacramento. As they would get the draft rights to Alex Karaban, the big man from UConn. They actually list him as a forward, and they actually state that he is 6 feet 7 inches tall. Considering how they were moving him around on the floor at UConn, you wouldn't even imagine that was the case. And yet, here we are. Now, back to the Kings. Karaban was listed as a third string small forward and a fourth string power forward. I think that this was summed up perfectly. The man has done it all at UConn, to the point where he was inducted into the team's Ring of Honor before his career even officially ended with the school. Multi-time national championship there. Only started, let me rephrase that. Started in all but one of his 151 games with the school. All but one. He's been there from the very jump alongside Dan Hurley. And to the point where they were sitting in this general area, he and other teammates of his watching the draft. And as soon as they get selected, you hear all of them cheering him on in real time. It's an entire brotherhood, an entire family affair. Just getting together, watching them get into the NBA. So that is truly inspirational stuff. Karaban as well is also the all-time leader in threes for the school. You literally could not escape it with Karaban. As a stretch 4 stretch 5 on occasion. He was lethal, shooting 37.9% from the field for his career with the program. Like, you know what you're going to get from Alex Karaban there. It is all about the unknowns right now for him and his game that will truly determine what happens next. He's not a strong defender. He is not a strong playmaker as it would appear right now. He is going to have a bit of an issue in regards to getting his way down low and shooting at an efficient level there. And the Kings are going to have to evaluate all those things to see what exactly they want to do with him in the long term. But I don't mind them getting that at all. And then with the 30th overall pick to end off the first round, in a time where they were actually mocked to pick several guys, including the likes of Isaiah Evans, one of the 24 called in the green room and the very last player still remaining there by the end of it all, as a potential six-man even. Like that would have been very intriguing for the Mavericks, but they did not select him. Instead, they took Koa Peat. And I was caught by surprise with that. Koa Peat coming into it was a highly touted freshman as a forward. I'm thinking that he's a power forward, small forward combination. I think he got reps at both last season. I could be wrong. But he was expected to, really burst onto the scene. And the Arizona squad overall was really good. People thought that he underwhelmed a little bit with 14.1 points per game and 35% shooting from deep, along with 2.6 assists and 5.6 rebounds per. Like, it's not the worst problem in the world to have, considering just how great that the Wildcats were last year. But I think people were anticipating a little more, and they didn't get that. Now, having Koa Peat on this roster, they go different from all their other picks here. Like, literally. It's crazy when you think about it. Johnson Jr. was clearly a defensive-minded player from the jump. That goes without saying. You have Koa Peat being more of a post threat and a finisher at the rim, and you have Sergio De La Rea being an absolute three-point sniper. All wings filling different roles that the Mavericks are hoping mesh truly well together when it is all said and done. And the fact that, again, with that being it now, they go through all that and they get 3 picks in the first round. Regardless of what you think about each of the players here, that is just mental to think about. But that would be it for the first round. The second round is going to be today. So a lot of intrigue here. A lot of players that still were not taken that could be selected within just the first few picks. So there's a lot to be looking forward to there. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.